We are in this 13th session. We're going to talk about Halloween paraphernalia. And I want to tell you a story of a lady that came to our church years ago. She had 4 children, kind of stair-stepped in age, 7, 5, 3, and 1. And when she came to me, she was very, very desperate. She says, I don't understand what's going on with me. She says, but my kids are always sick. I'm always in the emergency room. I'm always at the doctor. They're always doing something. They cut themselves. They have pink eye. They have something happen. The one kid fell and broke his arm. There was just one thing after another. And I would say if in your life you're accident prone, you always have accidents and repeated accidents, a lot of times, even maybe in the same thing, that maybe there's a curse that is at work in your life. This lady saw all these accidents that we're having. So she lived down by Fresno Pacific. There's some apartments there behind the Home Depot. And so I went over one day, and when I got there, of course, right away, as I normally do, I walked into her apartment. It was a very small apartment, and the kitchen was back this way. The living room was here, and there was a couch there. And so I sat down on the couch, and so I started looking around for a cursed object. I was looking for something that I might be pretty obvious. So I began to talk to her and just asking her different standard questions. Have you brought anything into the house? And, no, not really, and what's happening to the kids? So she began to tell me this litany of things that were going on with her kids, in and out of the hospital, this and that. Kids are always out of it. I'm tired of it. I can't take it anymore. I don't know what's happening with me. And so I said, well, do you mind if we look around? And so as I was probing her a little bit, I hit on the subject of Halloween. And she got, Halloween, that's my favorite, I thought, oh boy, that's it. And so she said, I love Halloween. My kids, I decorate them all up. We go out trick-or-treating, and we have all this Halloween. She goes, look at this. And so right in the living room where I was sitting, right in front of me, there was a closet right there, and she opened it up. It was full, not only of Halloween paraphernalia, but she had all this sorcery stuff, witch's brew, casting spells, all that stuff, and that she had from her previous life that she used to live before she was a Christian believer. But she had the most demonic. I thought, why are you dressing your kids with these kind of things? They were like really, and I'm just putting up some mask here, these really ugly things, and these are just representative masks of stuff, But I said, why do you have all this junk in your house? This is a terrible stuff. And of course, she was living in an apartment, and I looked at her backyard, and it was no more than just a little fence right there. And I go, well, we can't burn this in the back of your yard. I said, so I tell you what, I said, you have so much stuff here. I'm going to take it. And I remembered that I was right there by where that Home Depot was, and I went into the back. I don't know if you're not supposed to dump. Please forgive me if you guys don't turn me in or anything. But I said, let's load this into my car. I filled the trunk of my car. I filled the back seat of my car all the way up with all this Halloween paraphernalia that this lady had of her kids. And then I thought, oh no, the curse is now in my car. So I said, you know what? I'll be right back. And so I drove as fast as I could around the corner, and I went that back alley, and I dumped all of that Halloween stuff that she had into that big dumpster. And again, within I don't know, weeks later, she was telling me that all the stuff that was going on with her kids stopped right away. And she had all these books on making brews, witches' brews. She had casting spell books and all that stuff on the top shelf, right below where all the paraphernalia was on the bottom. And so, honestly, when parents take kids to go trick-or-treating, the kids are not thinking, oh, great, I get to participate today in sorcery. They're only out there for the candy. That's what I went. When I went as a little kid, I went trick-or-treating. I went there because I knew there were Snicker bars, there were Reese's, and I was Mars and Almond Joy. I said, in fact, when I got it and I didn't like it, I walked away from the lady, as a little kid. I go, man, she didn't give me the kind of candy I like. I'm a sore loser. But so kids don't go there thinking, I'm going to do something evil. You know, they're not thinking that way. Some people asked me years ago, should we watch Finding Nemo? And I go, what's the problem? He goes, well, Ellen DeGeneres is that one fish, and she's a lesbian. And I go, do you think your son is looking at that fish thinking, you know what, there's a lesbian that's voicing this fish? And I go, your kid is not thinking about those kinds of things. And the same thing about Halloween. People are not thinking that these things are going to be evil, but you can study the history. Won't go to it. You research it on your own. But it has a very evil history as to when it was done, and the Saints' Day on November 1st, and why they do it. It's the eve of the Saints' Day. That's why over in Mexico they have those Dia de los Muertos, where they go out on the cemetery. It's evil stuff that they're doing. So Halloween, really, its whole root system. The Irish were the ones that actually brought the Halloween practice here in the mid-1800s, when they had the potato famine and the people came over from Ireland. The Irish people had a lot of these traditions. And believe me, they've doctored it up since what those people believed, but they still had demonic origins. There was a lady that worked for me, and I was her supervisor, and she came into my office and closed the door, and she says, I need your help. And you know what? I thought she was getting ready to confess, like she was having an affair. I don't know what. It just seemed like she was really troubled, and she was going to tell me something, so he closed the door. And so I said, what's going on? And she says, well, I have nightmares all the time, all regular nightmares. And she goes, the other day, my husband, I woke up and I was sweating, and I screamed, and it scared my husband. And I said, I don't know why this is happening to me. And I don't remember exactly at what point I asked her, whether it was later or whether I prayed about it or whatever, whether I told her at that moment. I may have even wrote it in the book, but I don't recall how it happened. But anyway, the bottom line is, I said, do you by any chance, because I had seen this in a previous person, I go, do you by any chance watch horror flicks, horror movies? Psycho, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all those movies. I go, do you watch any of that stuff? And her face again lit up. She had all the collection. Friday the 13th. She had the Night of the Living Dead. She had all those Rosemary's Baby. She had The Exorcist. That was her favorite. She called it her library. That's what she called it. And she had hundreds of horror flicks that she was watching. And she was a Christian believer. She was a Christian. She went to another church. And I said, I told her, I said, sister, I go, don't you see the connection between what you're watching? You're putting all these images in your mind of stabbings and killings and just terrible things. I go, don't you know that this is awful? And I remember Rex Reed, the guy that does the evaluation of movies, he said when he watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre, he says it was the most horrific movie he'd ever seen. And when I was growing up, those were the movies I went to see. And man, Texas Chainsaw Massacre was one of my favorites. Scared me to death. Frogs, Willard. Oh, I went to go see all those terrible movies, man. I was lost. I didn't know the Lord back then. And isn't it interesting, when I saw the movie Frogs, as we were leaving the movie theater, we had to walk through a dark area before I could get to my house, and my friends were walking. And I decided to play a joke. I saw a frog! And we ran really fast all the way across this open field as fast as we could, because we'd just seen the movie of Frogs. We were little kids, And, man, it was bad. Anyway, I told this sister, I said, you know what? You got to get rid of all this stuff. You got to get rid of all these horror flicks and subjecting your mind, your heart, your spirit. The Holy Spirit is, if He's in you, you're letting Him be there while you're trying to watch all this stuff. It's like, no way, So anyway, she ended up, thankfully, I didn't know what she was going to do because she called it a library of hundreds of books, of movies that she had on these killings and everything, murders and just the worst type of vampire movies and all that. She ended up getting rid of all of them. And the only thing I can tell you is probably a month or so later, all the nightmares were gone. And I told her, you also need to pray. Don't think those images just instantly, just because you threw that away, all that digital image stuff you have in you. They're in your spirit, And so she had been praying, her husband had been praying, but all the nightmares that she had went away. And so I think these items right here, too, are cursed objects that come in to homes. Many people like to watch FBI files, forensic files, those kind of documentaries, true crime, a BTK killer. And I remember watching a documentary on Ted Bundy. Man, that guy was sick, And after a while I was watching them all, 10 years ago, maybe I would say 5-10 years ago, I was watching them all. And they would always depict, and they would reenact the crime. They would reenact how the rape began. And all these images were getting into my spirit. And one day I was reading in Proverbs where there's 6 things the Lord hates, 7 are abomination. And one it says, the things the Lord hates, a heart that devises wicked imaginations. And you know what? We don't need to know what Ted Bundy was thinking. He was killing women in Utah and Florida. He was dismembering them. I don't need to know all of that stuff. I don't need to know this true crime stuff. And so I would just ask you to evaluate your own heart if you're watching this kind of stuff, to ask yourself, do you really want to subject your spirit to that? Do you want to have all those murders and wicked things that wicked people are doing? Do you want that in your spirit? I don't think so. I don't think we need all of that in our spirit. So anyway, pray about that. Think about it. I think you should not watch those things. They really defile you. So in the next teaching, we're going to talk about how witchcraft defiles, and we're going to go to the book of Leviticus and see what it has to say there. So we'll do that next.